You plan the perfect surprise, only to realize you're the punchline. You look at your husband and see a stranger, a man engaged to someone else. My story didn't start with a scream. It started with silence, the lethal silence of a woman who realized she had been erased and then decided to respond with a total purge. My name is Alara Wells. I am 38 years old, and I am very good at my job. At Synapse Analytics, I build worlds out of data. I find the signal in the noise. I can look at a million scattered points of behavior and see the pattern, the motive, the inevitable outcome. I predict things. It is what I do. But I never predicted this. The lobby of the Airy in Cherry Creek was all cold marble and gold fixtures, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and quiet money. I checked my reflection in a polished bronze panel. My hair was perfect. My dress was perfect. Everything had to be. This was Julian's 40th. I clutched the heavy box from the artisan bakery, the custom-made red velvet cake inside. His favorite. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, that giddy, anxious energy of a perfectly executed surprise. Beside me, our friends, our family, were buzzing. There was Maya, my supposed best friend, already sipping from a stolen glass of champagne. There was Ben and Chloe, who we hosted for brunch just last Sunday. The 6 of us, the tightest-knit group in Denver. He is going to lose his mind. Alara, Maya whispered, squeezing my arm. He has no idea. That's the plan. I smiled. The plan. My plan. Months of meticulous arrangements, secret emails with the restaurant manager, deposits paid from my own bonus, all to see the look on my husband's face. We crowded into the private elevator. The brass doors slid shut, encasing us in a small, mirrored box. The music piped in was too loud, a frantic jazz flute that grated on my nerves. I held the cake with both hands, my knuckles white. The ascent felt agonizingly slow, a pressurized climb. I could taste the champagne I'd had earlier, and it had turned sour on my tongue, a metallic tang of adrenaline. My skin felt too tight. "Okay, everyone," I said, my voice higher than I wanted. "When the doors open, we go right, toward the West Terrace. On my count. 1, 2. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. 3. We surged out onto the rooftop, a wave of manufactured joy. "Happy birthday!" We screamed in unison. The shout hung in the air, then shattered. The noise that hit us back wasn't surprise. It was music, a different kind of music, a sleek, pounding house beat. The terrace was already full of people, dozens of them, strangers in glittering cocktail attire, all holding champagne flutes, and in the center of them, bathed in the soft glow of fairy lights, was Julian. He turned. His eyes met mine. The color drained from his face, leaving a sickly, waxy pallor. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. He was not alone. His hand was not empty. It was holding the hand of another woman, a younger woman, impossibly beautiful, wrapped in a silver dress that looked poured onto her skin. Serafina Hayes. I knew her vaguely from some society blog. Julian was holding a microphone. He had been in the middle of a speech, a toast. The woman, Serafina, was beaming at him, her left hand resting possessively on his chest. On her ring finger, a diamond flashed, a rock so large it looked like a weapon, an engagement ring. The music stuttered. The laughter of the other party died. My voice, our voices, echoed in the sudden, catastrophic silence. Julian stared at me. He didn't move. He just stared, his face a mask of pure reptilian shock. I stood frozen, the heavy cake box digging into my palms. The air, moments before filled with my anticipation, was now sucked from my lungs. The smells of expensive food and night-blooming jasmine choked me. Then, the second shockwave hit. I turned to Maya, to Ben, to Chloe, expecting confusion, expecting outrage on my behalf. "What is this?" I managed to whisper, my throat closing. They were silent. Maya wasn't looking at Julian. She was looking at Ben. Chloe was studying her manicure, suddenly fascinated by it. A glance passed between them, not of confusion, but of something else. Acknowledgement. They were not surprised. The realization was a physical blow, colder and sharper than the diamond on that woman's hand. They knew. They had known. The invitations. They must have received 2 invitations. One from me, the decoy, the joke, and one from Julian and Serafina, the real one. They hadn't come here to support me. They had come to watch, to see the moment the data scientist, the woman who predicts everything, finally failed to see the one variable that mattered. The cake felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The silence stretched, becoming thin and brittle. Julian's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Serafina's smile faltered, her gaze shifting from Julian to me, her expression hardening from confusion into a cold, territorial assessment. She knew exactly who I was. I looked back at my husband, the man I had loved for 5 years, the man I had planned a future with. He was a stranger, a liar, and he had just been caught. And my friends, my family, stood there, silent witnesses to my execution. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not throw the cake in his face, though I noted the fleeting fantasy. Emotion is a bad data set. It is unreliable and corrupts the analysis. I looked at Julian, his face pale and frozen. I looked at Serafina, her hand sliding from his chest to his arm, a gesture of ownership. I looked at Maya, who was now avoiding my gaze, her expression one of pitiful, fascinated horror. I turned around. I walked to the nearest table, a sleek granite slab holding a tower of champagne flutes. I placed the red velvet cake box down with surgical precision, centering it on the marble. I did not slam it. I placed it. Then I turned and walked back to the elevator. The ride down was silent. My supposed friends had not followed me. I was grateful. Their presence was noise, irrelevant data points. In the mirrored box, I saw my reflection. I looked calm. My face was a mask of placid neutrality. The jazz flute music was still playing. The walk from the elevator to my car in the valet line was a study in controlled motion. Left foot, right foot. The cool Denver air felt good against my hot skin. I handed the valet my ticket. I did not shake. The penthouse was dark. Our home. I dropped my keys in the glass bowl by the door. The sound was offensively loud. I walked past the kitchen, past the sprawling sofa where we had watched movies, past the gallery wall of our wedding photos. I did not look at them. I went to my office. I sat in my ergonomic chair and woke my console. 3 monitors flickered to life, bathing the dark room in a cold blue glow. My laptop, my sanctuary, my arsenal. Julian's betrayal was not a heartbreak. It was a catastrophic data breach, a system-wide failure. My entire life's operating system had been compromised by a hostile actor. So I did what I do. I began the damage analysis. I bypassed emotion and initiated a full diagnostic. I started running a regression algorithm on the last 5 years of my marriage, searching for the anomaly, the point of infection. The machine processed. My mind processed with it. Variable 1. The business trips. Julian had been to Aspen 6 times in the last year, always for Vance Consulting, always to meet potential clients at the ski lodges. A quick search. Serafina Hayes, her father, a Texas oil magnate, owned one of the largest ski-in, ski-out villas in Aspen. The dates of Julian's trips lined up perfectly with the society photos of her hosting winter parties. The anomaly was no longer an anomaly. It was a pattern. Variable 2, the money. I pulled our joint accounts, which I managed. Then I pulled his business accounts, which he thought I ignored. I am a data scientist. I do not ignore data. The large cash withdrawals. tens of thousands of dollars at a time. He called them seed money for his angel investors, necessary payments to secure his next round of funding. He had been so convincing, so passionate about his startup, Vance Consulting, the boutique advisory firm he was building from scratch, the firm I had supported, the firm I had funded. My inheritance, $300,000 from my mother, had been the angel investment that got him started. I had transferred it to him willingly, a gesture of faith. The algorithm in my head was running faster now, connecting the nodes, the Aspen trips, the cash withdrawals. The new woman with the billion-dollar father. The conclusion was simple, brutal, and mathematically sound. Julian was not building a business. He was liquidating me. Then, a new memory surfaced, a data point I had misfiled. 6 months ago. A Tuesday. Julian had come home with a bottle of my favorite wine and a stack of documents. "Ilara, honey, you are so much smarter about this stuff than I am," he had said, kissing my temple. "The bank called. Rates are at an all-time low. We can refinance the mortgage on the penthouse, pull down our interest rate by almost 2%. It is free money." He had seemed so proud, so responsible. I was in the middle of a massive project at Synapse, working 70-hour weeks. I glanced at the papers. They looked standard, reams of boilerplate from the bank. His finger pointed to the signature lines. Here and here. I trusted him. I signed. My fingers flew across the keyboard. The blue light of the monitors reflected in my glasses. I was not accessing the bank's portal. I was accessing the Denver County Public Records database. I entered our address. The property details loaded. Owners Julian Vance and Ilara Wells. I kept scrolling. Mortgage information. Lenders. And then, a new entry. Dated 6 months ago. The week I signed those papers, a document filed quitclaim deed. My blood did not run cold. It evaporated. A quitclaim deed does not refinance a home. It transfers ownership. I opened the scanned file. My eyes scanned the text, ignoring the legal jargon, searching for the destination. The property owned by Julian Vance and Ilara Wells was hereby transferred to an LLC, a limited liability company I had never heard of. Apex Holdings Group LLC. I scrolled to the last page, the signature page. There was Julian's signature, a bold, arrogant scrawl, and there was mine, except it was not mine. It was a forgery. A passable one, clearly traced from another document, but to my analytical eye, the pressure was wrong. The loop on the E too deliberate. He had not refinanced our home. He had stolen it. He had convinced me to sign a stack of papers, probably burying this one deed in the middle. Or he had simply forged it after the fact. The penthouse I was sitting in, the home I had paid the down payment for, the walls that held the last 5 years of my life, was no longer mine. It belonged to Apex Holdings Group. I opened a new tab. I searched for the registered agent of the LLC. The name that appeared on the screen was Julian Vance. I did not call a divorce lawyer. Divorce is a settlement. I was not interested in settling. This was not a dissolution of a marriage. It was the discovery of a long-term financial crime. You do not bring a therapist to an autopsy. You bring a scalpel. My fingers did not search for family law. They typed Arthur Bryant. Bryant was a name whispered in the wealthiest circles of Denver. He was not a lawyer. He was a forensic accountant, a man who performed financial autopsies on the portfolios of the white-collar elite. He was known, quite simply, as the surgeon. He found the cancer, he cut it out, and he charged a fee that could bankrupt a small country. I called his private number at 5:30 in the morning. He answered on the second ring with a curt, "Bryant." "You do not know me," I said, my voice flat. "My name is Ilara Wells. I am the victim of a complex, multi-year fraud perpetrated by my husband, and I have the preliminary data to prove it." There was a pause. "My office. 6 in the morning." The line clicked. Bryant's office was not in a high-rise. It was a discreet, unmarked brownstone in Capitol Hill. His assistant, a woman who looked like she could crack military-grade encryption, showed me into a room that was more of a library than an office. Arthur Bryant was a small, precise man in a vest, with eyes so sharp I felt like they were auditing my internal organs. I did not cry. I did not offer a narrative of my pain. I opened my laptop. "Let's begin," I said. "This is a regression analysis of 5 years of financial data. Here are the bank statements I pulled. Here are the suspicious memos. Here are the emails referencing angel investors that correspond directly with large-scale cash withdrawals." For an hour, I spoke without emotion, walking him through the data points, the Aspen trips, the forged quitclaim deed, the LLC, the timeline of his startup, Vance Consulting. Bryant did not speak. He just watched my screen, his fingers steepled. The only sound was the click of my keyboard. When I finished, I closed the laptop. The silence in the room was absolute. "You are correct," Bryant said finally, his voice dry as old paper. "You are not a wife. You are a mark." He stood and walked to a whiteboard. "Your husband is not a consultant. He is a con man, and he is not very original." He began to write, "Your $300,000 inheritance." This was his seed capital. He used it to establish Vance Consulting. "You are right. It is a ghost company. It has no clients, no product, no revenue. It is a shell, designed for one purpose: to look legitimate enough to secure a much larger fish." "Serafina Hayes," I said. "Precisely," Bryant said, not turning. "But he is also sloppy. He is in debt. I ran his name while you were talking. He has significant offshore gambling markers. He is not just funding a new life. He is plugging holes in a sinking ship. He is desperate." He turned back to me. "My initial search on that LLC, Apex Holdings Group. Your husband is the registered agent. Yes, but that is a front. The entity itself is registered to a silent partner, someone he is trying very hard to hide. We will find out who." Bryant looked at the file I had printed of the forged deed. "This is good. This is a felony. But it is not our primary weapon. What is—" "We do not attack him directly," Bryant said, a flicker of something like enthusiasm in his cold eyes. "A direct lawsuit would alert him. He would move the money, declare bankruptcy. You would spend years in court fighting over scraps. No." He leaned forward. "We do not storm the castle. We cut off his oxygen. We find his financial supply lines, and we sever them, one by one, silently. By the time he realizes he cannot breathe, he will already be dead." The strategy was cold, methodical, and analytical. It was the most comforting thing I had heard in 12 hours. "So where do we start?" I asked. Bryant smiled. It was not a kind expression. "We already have. I ran the property title on your penthouse while you were presenting. The forgery is the least interesting part." He tapped a few keys on his own terminal and turned the screen to me. "Your husband, using his fraudulent ownership of the property via the LLC, has applied for a massive business loan, $5 million. The collateral for that loan is the penthouse he stole from you." I stared at the screen. The loan was from a private equity firm, and the underwriting was complete. "He is not just trying to build a new life," I whispered. "He is trying to leverage your assets to fund it." Bryant finished. "And, according to this, the loan is set to be funded in 3 business days." I left Bryant's office as the sun was rising, the cold morning light feeling clinical and harsh. My mind was no longer processing grief. It was processing a threat. Julian was not just a cheating husband. He was an active vulnerability in my system, and he was about to leverage my own assets to destroy me. It was time for a digital purge. Back in the penthouse, his LLC's penthouse, I went to my console. When Julian started Vance Consulting, I had set up his entire IT infrastructure. I configured the shared cloud server, the firewalls, the remote access. And because I am meticulous, I created 2 administrator accounts, one for him, with all the visible controls, and one for me, with root access to everything. He never knew. He thought I was just his tech support wife. I logged in under my own credentials. Root. I was not in his user-facing folders, the ones filled with fake spreadsheets and plagiarized marketing materials. I was in the server's backend, the hidden directories he did not know how to access. It took me less than 3 minutes. He had hidden it well, but not from the architect. A folder, nested 5 levels deep, named Project Equitas. Inside it, a single, password-protected file, Plan B, Final Pitch Deck. His password was pathetically simple. Serafina's birthday. I opened the file. It was not a plan for a consulting firm. It was a 90-page investment proposal, complete with stunning graphics and projected returns that were mathematically impossible. The entire pitch was aimed at one man, Marcus Hayes, Serafina's oil tycoon father. Julian was not just marrying Serafina. He was trying to execute a hostile takeover of her family's trust fund. The core of his proposal was the algorithm. He claimed Vance Consulting had developed a revolutionary predictive market algorithm, a proprietary piece of artificial intelligence that could anticipate energy market fluctuations with 98% accuracy. He was seeking $50 million for a 49% stake in the technology. I scrolled to the technical appendix, my blood running not hot, but icy. I did not see his work. I saw my own. The flowcharts, the data architecture, the core logic. He had copied it verbatim. It was Project Odyssey, a personal side project I had been developing for Synapse Analytics, a passion project. Something I believed could change how we model market volatility. I remembered the night, maybe 8 months ago. I was excited by a breakthrough. I had brought my laptop to the living room to show him. I had explained the beauty of the neural network I was building, my voice full of passion. He had looked at it, his eyes vacant, and said, "That's great, honey. Super smart." He had not been vacant. He had been shopping. He had stolen my intellectual property. He had stolen my work, my mind, and was selling it to his new father-in-law as his own. This was not just fraud. This was a violation. I kept digging. If he was arrogant enough to steal my code, he was arrogant enough to be sloppy elsewhere. I found another hidden partition. This one was labeled personal. It was not documents. It was audio files. Dozens of them. Voice memos. I clicked the first one. It was Julian. But it was not my Julian. This voice was slick, arrogant, and cruel. He was talking to Serafina. So easy. Ilara is a bookworm. Baby. She lives in her spreadsheets. She's cold. She doesn't know how the real world works. My hand was steady on the mouse. I clicked the next file. You have to laugh. She is just so predictable. I told her I needed money for an investor, and she just wired it. $300,000. Didn't even ask a single question. God, sometimes I almost feel sorry for her. A new voice. Serafina's. Light, breathy, and dripping with malice. Is she really that boring, Jules? Boring. She's a walking calculator. Julian laughed. She's the past. Sarah, you are the future. The words were meant to wound. They did. But the primary thing I felt was a cold, clarifying rage. He had documented his own sociopathy. He had created a perfect, immutable record of his intent. My instinct was not to delete. Deletion is a tantrum. It is an emotional, temporary act of destruction. I am a data scientist. I do not destroy data. I archive it. I plugged in a military-grade, encrypted solid-state drive. It was sand-colored, designed to withstand water, shock, and extreme temperatures. I initiated a full root-level copy, not just the pitch deck and the audio files. Everything. Every hidden file, every login record, every deleted fragment he thought was gone. The progress bar filled. 34 gigabytes of his entire digital life. His lies, his debts, his affair, his fraud, my algorithm. The transfer completed. I ran a verification script to ensure a perfect one-to-one copy. It was clean. I ejected the drive and slid it into my pocket. The server was untouched. He would never know I had been there. I had not purged his server. I had purged him from my system, and I had just downloaded the weapon I would use to burn his world to the ground. I listened to the audio file of Serafina's tinkling laugh one more time. A walking calculator. Julian had called me. It was not an insult. It was a statement of fact. A calculator is precise, unemotional, and does not make mistakes. They thought I was the enemy. Julian had surely painted me as the obsessed ex-wife, a narrative I had seen him deploy before against a former colleague. The audio files proved he was using the same script on me that he had used with me. "She is just so cold," he had whispered on the recording. I analyzed the variables. Serafina was not the adversary. She was the next mark. She was the one paying for the future, just as I had paid for the past. Attacking her would be a waste of resources. She was compromised, blinded by the romance he was selling. The true player, the one with the power, was her father, Marcus Hayes, a man who ran a multi-billion-dollar oil empire from Houston, a man who, according to financial journals, was famously ruthless. A shark. You do not reason with a shark. You show it the blood in the water. Attacking Julian directly was still a bad move. I needed to move the pieces on the board indirectly, to let the opponent discover the threat himself. I spent 3 hours in a public data haven, routing my connection through a series of encrypted proxies. I created a new email account, one that could not be traced back to me or any of my known associates. It was clean. Finding Marcus Hayes's private email was not simple, but it was not impossible. Men like that hide behind corporate firewalls, but they always have a back channel. I found it in the metadata of an obscure SEC filing for one of his shell corporations. I drafted the email. The body of the message was empty. Emotion was noise. An explanation was an appeal. I was not appealing. I was providing a data point. I attached a single file, a high-resolution scan of the forged quitclaim deed, the document that moved my penthouse into Julian's LLC. For the subject line, I wrote a simple sentence. The only text in the entire communication, check your future son-in-law's collateral. I hit send. The first move was made. Now, for the second. Julian was about to apply for a $5 million loan against my stolen property. He was also, according to Arthur Bryant's research, over $250,000 in debt to various offshore gambling sites. He was desperate. I needed to apply pressure to his public image, the one thing he valued as much as money. I used a different, completely separate anonymous service. I sent a tip to a notorious Denver society blogger, the one who lived to document the scandals of the Cherry Creek elite. The tip was short. Ask Julian Vance how he is managing to fund his new engagement. Friends are worried. He is telling everyone he is a startup king, but sources say he is drowning in over $250,000 of online gambling debt. Wonder if his new fiancée knows. Why, I did not sign it. I just planted the seed. I closed all connections, wiped the terminals, and left. I went back to the penthouse, packed a single suitcase, and moved my essential equipment to a secure corporate apartment I kept under a private lease. I did not tell Arthur. I did not tell anyone. Then, I waited. The blogger was first. 2 days later, a blind item appeared. Which Denver tech guru, newly engaged to an heiress, is hiding a massive secret? We hear he is better at picking horses than building businesses, and his debts are catching up to his charm. It was vague, but the ripples started. I saw the post shared in certain social circles. The noise was beginning. The real response came on the 4th day. It was not an email. I was leaving my office at Synapse when a man stepped into my path. He was not large or threatening. He wore a perfectly tailored suit and looked profoundly bored. "Ms. Wells," he asked. I stopped but did not speak. My heart rate remained steady. "My employer has a reputation for valuing accuracy," the man said, his voice flat. He received an interesting piece of data regarding a mutual acquaintance. He was impressed by the efficiency of the delivery. "I am a data scientist," I said. "I value efficiency." The man almost smiled. He is not a man who enjoys being lied to. He has confirmed the validity of the document you sent. He has also confirmed that this document is being used as collateral for a rather substantial loan application. So, Marcus had done his homework. He had verified the forgery. He knew. And I asked. And he finds himself in an interesting position. He is not inclined to confront Mr. Vance directly. Not yet. He believes, as you seem to, that a watch-and-wait approach is more profitable. The man handed me a small, thick business card. It was blank, except for a handwritten address and a time. Mr. Hayes is in Denver. He would like to propose an alliance. He believes you may have more data he would find useful. The address on the card led to the Sovereign Club, a place in Lodo so discreet it did not have a name on the door. It was all dark mahogany, old leather, and the suffocating silence of generational wealth. The man who had met me in the street, who I now understood was Marcus's head of security, escorted me to a private study. Marcus Hayes was sitting by a dead fireplace, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He looked exactly like his photos, rugged, weathered, with the piercing eyes of a man who has never lost a negotiation. He did not get up. "Ms. Wells," he said. His voice was a low gravel, thick with a Texas drawl. "Whiskey." "No, thank you," I said. "I am here to provide data." He took a slow sip. "Let's be clear. I do not care about your feelings. I am not interested in the emotional wreckage of your marriage. I am interested in the fact that your husband, this Julian Vance, has attempted to lie to me." He leaned forward, the ice in his glass cracking. "My daughter can be naive. She is wired to trust. I am not. So, you will tell me everything." It was not a request. It was a command. I sat opposite him. I did not open my laptop. Instead, I took the sand-colored, encrypted hard drive from my bag and placed it on the antique table between us. "This is everything," I said. "He is not just lying to you. He is building a con artistry enterprise, and he is using my stolen assets and your daughter's future as the startup capital." For the next 20 minutes, I gave him the autopsy. I did not present as a victim. I presented as a fellow analyst. "Exhibit A, the algorithm," I said, my voice as flat as his. "He is pitching you a predictive market algorithm. That algorithm is my intellectual property, stolen from my side project at Synapse Analytics. This drive contains the source code, my original time-stamped files, and his pitch deck, Project Equitas, showing the direct theft." So, Marcus's expression did not change, but his eyes hardened. "Exhibit B, the collateral. You have seen the forged deed. This drive contains the original file for the $5 million loan application he is attempting to secure against that stolen property. Exhibit C, the debts." I summarized Arthur's findings. "He is not just optimistic. He is desperate. He is over $250,000 in debt to offshore gambling sites. This drive contains the ledgers." "And finally," I said, "Exhibit D, intent." I did open my laptop for this. I navigated to the audio files. He was careless. He documented his own motives. I did not play the files where he called me a calculator. I chose a different one. I hit play. Julian's voice filled the silent room, slick and confident. "Marcus Hayes is the golden goose, baby. He is old money, too proud to look at the details. He just wants to buy his little girl the best, and I am the best. He will not even see it coming." I stopped the recording. Marcus Hayes was silent for a full minute. He stared into his glass. When he finally looked up, his face was terrifyingly calm. "The boy is not just a grifter," he said softly. "He is a parasite, and he is trying to attach himself to my family trust." "He is," I confirmed. "He has a presentation scheduled," Marcus said, almost to himself. "A final pitch. He believes he is coming to my Houston headquarters next week to demo this algorithm and secure a $50 million investment." "Are you going to cancel?" I asked. Marcus looked at me, truly looked at me, for the first time. He smiled, and it was the smile of a shark. Cancel no. Ms. Wells, I am going to let the presentation proceed. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights. He wants a launch event, a big, public show to impress me and the rest of Denver. I told him no. Now, I am going to tell him yes. I will fund the entire event. I will invite my investors. I will invite the press. I processed this. He was not going to shut Julian down. He was going to give him a bigger stage. You think that anonymous tip to the blogger was news to me, Marcus said, turning back. I knew about the gambling debt 3 weeks ago. My team flagged him as a high-risk personality the day he proposed to my daughter. I was just waiting to see how the parasite would explain the $250,000 hole. I was going to let him dig. Your information simply confirmed the how. He picked up the hard drive from the table. He wanted to lie to me. He wanted to steal from you. He wanted to put on a show. He locked eyes with me. Now, he will not just fail. He will be publicly eviscerated, and you, Ms. Wells, are going to help me design the bomb. I returned to my desk at Synapse Analytics on Monday morning as if nothing had happened. My colleagues saw Alara Wells, senior data scientist. They saw the calm, focused woman who ran the modeling division. They did not see a weapon being sharpened. My work for Synapse was real, and I completed it with my usual efficiency. But I was running a parallel process. I was working for 2 purposes. My main focus was not on the datasets Synapse was paying me for. It was on the one Julian had stolen. He was an idiot. A charming, narcissistic, technologically illiterate idiot. When he copied my Project Odyssey algorithm, he had not copied the source code. He had copied the compiled executable. He had no idea how to access the underlying architecture. He had, in effect, stolen a car but did not know how to open the hood. But I had left a back door. I always do. When I set up his server, I created a root-level vulnerability that only I knew how to exploit. I did not need to log into his cloud server again. I could access the instance of the algorithm he was running from my own terminal at Synapse, tunneling through a secure shell. He thought he had a black box that spat out genius. He had no idea I was still holding the master key. From my console, I watched him run test simulations. He was preparing for Marcus's presentation. I saw the dummy data he was feeding it hyperinflated energy sector numbers, designed to produce a spectacular hockey stick graph of growth. He was practicing his lies. He thought the algorithm would show impressive market predictions. He was counting on it. I did not destroy the code. Destruction is clumsy. It is an admission of defeat, a digital scream. I am not a screamer. I am a surgeon. I did not want to break his new toy. I wanted to edit it. I began the real work. I began to code the logic bomb. It was the most intricate, beautiful piece of malicious code I had ever written. It was not a virus. It was a scalpel. I nested the payload deep within the rendering module of the program. It was designed to be dormant, invisible. It would pass all his diagnostic tests. He could run it 1,000 times, and it would give him his beautiful fake graphs every single time. It would run perfectly on his laptop, at his office, in his hotel room. But I had added a trigger, a simple, elegant conditional statement. I had already identified the venue Marcus Hayes had booked for the launch, the Grand Avalon Ballroom, a place wired with the newest tech. I found its dedicated block of static IP addresses. The logic bomb was tied to that specific IP range. The code I wrote was simple. If the program is executed, and the host machine's external IP address matches the Avalon's range, then bypass the primary rendering module, bypass the fake market simulation entirely, and execute Protocol Purge. Protocol Purge was my masterpiece. It was not programmed to show graphs of the stock market. It was programmed to do something far more interesting. Upon activation, it would use the live internet connection of the presentation to securely tunnel back to Julian's own Vance Consulting cloud server, the one he thought was so secure. It would use my hidden root credentials to access the partitions he had hidden. It would not show his fake data. It would show his real data. The presentation was set to run in 3 phases. My new protocol would match it. When Julian clicked the button for Phase 1 market projections, the algorithm would instead pull and display the ledger from his offshore gambling accounts. It would show the $250,000 negative balance. It would show the frantic, failed deposits. When he clicked for Phase 2 revenue model, the protocol would instead render the flowchart I had found, the one showing a single injection of $300,000 from E. Wells' inheritance, flowing directly from Vance Consulting into his personal hidden accounts. And for the grand finale, Phase 3 5-year outlook, I saved the best for last. The protocol would not pull a document. It would access and stream the audio files. It would populate the screen with the direct quotes, the transcripts of his voice. Too dumb. One pays for the past. One pays for the future. She's a walking calculator. Marcus Hayes is the golden goose. He will not even see it coming. I finished the code. I compiled it. I injected the patch into his executable file through the back door. The entire process took 47 minutes. He would walk onto that stage believing he was holding a miracle. He had no idea he was holding a mirror. He would launch his presentation, and my algorithm would show him, and everyone, exactly what he was. The first move was a deliberate misdirection. I had a courier serve Julian the divorce papers at the temporary office he was leasing for Vance Consulting. The petition was the simplest form I could file. Irreconcilable differences. It was a bland, quiet, expected end. It was noise. I wanted him to hear it, to focus on it, so he would not hear the shears I was bringing to cut his lifeline. It worked perfectly. His reaction was not fear. It was arrogance. My phone lit up, but I did not answer. He left 3 voicemails, each one a masterpiece of self-delusion. "Ilara, I just got the papers," his first message said, his voice laced with a sort of patronizing relief. "Look, I am glad you are finally accepting the inevitable. This is for the best, truly. We can be adults about this." The second message came an hour later, his tone harder. "Just so we are clear on the financials, I am prepared to be generous. I will let you keep the car and your own accounts. But as for the penthouse, that is a business asset. My lawyers have reviewed the LLC, and it is ironclad. You signed the papers. Ilara, you should have paid more attention." I listened to the transcripts from the living room of my new, secure apartment, a minimalist glass box high above the city, leased under a corporate name Arthur had arranged, with a dedicated fiber line that was completely untraceable. I did not reply. He was negotiating with a ghost. He was standing in a burning building, proudly polishing the fixtures, believing he was in complete control. The real attack came 48 hours later. It was not from me. It was from Arthur Bryant. The surgeon, as I was coming to call him, did not file a lawsuit. He simply drafted a single devastating letter on his prestigious firm's letterhead. It was addressed to the managing partner of the private equity firm that was about to fund Julian's $5 million loan. The letter was polite, professional, and lethal. It contained a copy of the original deed to my penthouse, a copy of the forged quitclaim deed, and a brief, expert analysis highlighting the signatory discrepancies. It was not an accusation. It was simply a notification of potential material misrepresentation in collateral. The result was immediate. The equity firm's compliance department slammed the brakes. I received a 1-line email from Arthur. "The loan is frozen, pending a full fraud investigation." The fallout on Julian's end was visible even from my remote location. The log on my old phone, which I was still monitoring, exploded. 9 missed calls from him in 1 hour, 2 from the equity firm, 1 from a number I did not recognize, which Arthur later identified as his primary bookie. He was panicking. His house of cards was collapsing. The gambling debts were being called in. The society blogger was asking pointed questions. and the $5 million rescue package he had been counting on to solve everything had just evaporated. He was trapped. He had no money, no loan, and his reputation was fraying. He had one, and only one, move left. The $50 million Hail Mary from Marcus Hayes. The presentation was no longer a formality. It was his only possible salvation. The air in the city grew still. It was the calm before the storm. I spent my days at Synapse, working, and my nights at the new apartment, running diagnostics on the logic bomb. It was perfect. Then, 2 days before the launch, an email appeared in my personal inbox. The sender's name made my stomach tighten. Serafina Hayes. The subject line was sickeningly bright. A new beginning. I opened it. It was a block of bubbly, cursive text, embedded in a digital invitation of roses and gold. Ilara, it read, I know things must be so difficult for you right now, and I want you to know my heart truly goes out to you. Julian has told me everything, and I believe that in the spirit of new beginnings, we should all try to be adults. As a gesture of goodwill, I wanted to personally invite you to the official launch of his new platform. It is going to be such a magical night for him, and it would mean so much to both of us if you were there to share it. Hope to see you there. She had no idea. She was a pawn, naively polishing the guillotine, thinking it was a party decoration. She was inviting me to my own revenge. I typed a single-word reply, accepted. I clicked the link to the event's registration page. Marcus had gone all out. The guest list was a public directory of Denver's most powerful investors, tech journalists, CEOs. I scanned the names, and then I saw it. David, CTO, Synapse Analytics. My boss, David. He was the executive who had sponsored Project Odyssey from the beginning. He knew my code. He had seen my demos. He knew its unique data signature. I picked up my desk phone and dialed his extension. David, I said. Ilara Wells, I see you are attending the Vance Consulting launch on Thursday. His voice was professional, a little curious. Ilara, yes. I received the invitation. I am always interested in seeing what the competition is claiming. I have a professional request. David, I said, my voice perfectly level. I need you to attend with me. There was a pause. He is a very smart man. With you, this sounds less than social. It is, I confirmed. I am attending because I have a strong suspicion, based on data I have acquired, that the revolutionary algorithm Mr. Vance is launching is, in fact, my intellectual property, specifically, Project Odyssey. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. I could hear him processing the implications. Theft, fraud, a massive corporate liability. I understand, he said finally, his voice now cold and all business. I will clear my schedule. I will pick you up at 7. The Grand Avalon Ballroom was not a party. It was a production. Marcus had spared no expense. Blue uplighting shimmered on brushed steel fixtures, and the primary screen was the size of a billboard. The air was thick and hot, smelling of venture capital and expensive perfume. It was a room packed with masks, and I was wearing one of my own. David, my chief technology officer at Synapse, was a solid, grounding presence next to me. He was not here as a friend. He was here as the guardian of our company's assets, a living representative of the corporate lawsuit that was about to be born. We did not speak. We moved through the crowd and found seats in the shadows of the back row, 2 analysts observing a fraudulent experiment. The lights dimmed. A sleek, throbbing introductory video filled the screen. A meaningless montage of stock footage rockets, data streams, diverse teams smiling in boardrooms. The buzzwords synergy, future, prediction, and equitas flashed. Then, a single spotlight hit the center stage, and Julian walked out to a wave of enthusiastic applause. He was wearing a custom-tailored suit that probably cost $20,000. He looked radiant. He looked powerful. He was the very picture of the charming, confident tech visionary. He raised his hands, smiling, soaking in the adoration. He was a predator, and this room was his feeding ground. My gaze drifted to the front row. There she was, Serafina, gazing up at him, her hands clasped under her chin as if he were a god. Beside her, impassive as granite, sat Marcus Hayes. He stared at the stage with the mild interest of a man deciding which racehorse to buy. He gave no sign that he and I had ever spoken. And then I saw them, 3 seats down from Marcus, Maya, Ben, Chloe, my former friends, my family. They were leaning forward, their faces tight with greedy anticipation. They had come to the rooftop party for the drama. They had come here for the payout. They had clearly bet on Julian, the man with the heiress and the revolutionary company. They were here to witness his coronation, to secure their place in his new, wealthy court. Julian began to speak, his voice smooth and intoxicating, echoing through the room's perfect sound system. We are told that the future is uncertain. We are told that volatility is the new normal, that risk is the only guarantee. He paced the stage, owning it. His eyes scanned the crowd, a practiced move of connection. He was drinking in the power, the validation. His gaze swept the back rows, passed over me, and then snapped back. He saw me. His words caught. He faltered for one glorious, fractional second. The blood drained from his face, leaving the same waxy, pale shock I had seen on the rooftop. I saw the panic. He knew I was here, but I was not holding a cake. I was sitting beside my boss. Julian recovered in an instant. The panic was replaced by a look of profound, arrogant dismissal. He thought I was here to make a scene. He thought I was the pathetic, scorned wife, come to cry or scream. He saw me as a final, insignificant annoyance to be swatted away before his triumph. He gave a tiny, cruel smirk, as if he pitied me, and turned his attention back to the investors. "But what if it was not?" he continued, his voice booming again. "What if you could harness the chaos? What if you had a tool that could see the future?" He clicked the remote in his hand. The massive screen behind him lit up. The Equitas logo faded, revealing a complex data visualization dashboard. I heard a sharp, sudden intake of breath next to me. David leaned in, his voice a low, furious whisper. "That is Odyssey." It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. He recognized the wireframe. He recognized the data architecture, the unique rendering engine. It was my signature. It was the demo I had presented to him and the Synapse board 6 months prior. "That is my company's intellectual property. Ilara," he hissed, his eyes locked on the stage. Julian was strutting in front of my work, my mind, my code, accepting praise for it. "He does not know what it really does," I said quietly, never taking my eyes off my husband. "Just watch." Julian beamed, his confidence so high it was practically a physical force. He was reborn, basking in the glow of the stage lights. He raised his remote like a conductor's baton. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice resonating with false sincerity. "This is the future of predictive analysis." He turned to the massive screen, his profile projected for all to see. "But why just tell you, let me show you?" He aimed the remote. "I give you. Project Equitas. Run live simulation." He clicked the button. The screen did not populate with the soaring graphs he was expecting. Instead, it flickered. It went black for a single, agonizing second, and then it repopulated. The room was silent. Julian stared, his smile frozen. On the screen, in stark black and white, was not a stock market projection. It was a statement, a detailed, itemized statement from an offshore gambling site based in Curaçao. At the very bottom, highlighted in a sickening, digital red, was the final line item, current balance negative, $250,000. A collective gasp sucked the air from the ballroom. I heard Maya let out a small, strangled sound from the front. Julian's face went bone white. He fumbled with the remote, clicking it frantically, his hand shaking. A technical glitch, he stammered, his voice suddenly thin. Just a moment. Let me close this. But my code was a scalpel, and it was now in control. The window would not close. His clicks did nothing. He seems to be having a problem. Julian laughed, a high-pitched, desperate sound. Let me just move to the next slide. The revenue model. He clicked again, desperately trying to advance. The screen flickered. The gambling statement vanished. Julian let out a shaky breath of relief, turning back to the audience with a weak smile. But the smile died as he saw their faces, all still staring in horror at the screen behind him. He turned back. The new image was not his revenue model. It was a flowchart, a simple, brutal diagram of theft. At the top, a box labeled E. Wells Inheritance $300,000. An arrow pointed from it to a box labeled Vance Consulting LLC. And from that box, a spray of arrows pointed to 3 final destinations, personal offshore accounts, Aspen Villa Deposit, and Diamond Ring S. Hayes. Julian was no longer speaking. He was just making small, choking sounds, staring at the immutable proof of his crime, broadcast 30 feet high. Julian. Serafina's voice was a tiny, breaking whisper from the front row. Jules, what is that? He ignored her. He was hyperventilating, clicking the remote over and over, a trapped animal. No, he whispered. No, no, no. He aimed the remote one last time. The 5-year outlook, he choked out, his last prayer. The outlook. The screen changed. The flowchart disappeared, and then the audio transcripts appeared. My logic bomb was streaming the audio files, transcribing his own words in real time, next to a picture of his face. 2 fools, the screen blared. One pays for the past, one pays for the future. She's a walking calculator. So predictable. Just gave me the money. Marcus Hayes is the golden goose. He will not even see it coming. The room was a tomb. Julian stood frozen, his arm extended, remote in hand, a statue of his own destruction. Into that dead silence, a new voice cut through. David. He stood up from his seat beside me, his face a mask of cold fury. This presentation is over, David announced, his voice ringing with the authority of a chief technology officer. That algorithm is not Project Equitas. It is Project Odyssey. It is the stolen intellectual property of Synapse Analytics, and this is corporate espionage. A new wave of shock rolled through the investors. Then, a second man stood up, Marcus Hayes. He did not look at David. He did not look at the screen. He looked only at Julian. And this, Marcus said, his Texas drawl lethally calm, is fraud. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. He simply lifted his chin, signaling to the 2 men in dark suits who had been standing by the ballroom doors. The security men moved. They walked directly to the stage. Julian did not resist. He was catatonic, his eyes vacant. They each took an arm and began to walk him, stiff-legged, off the stage and toward the exit. His life was over. As he was being marched past the front row, Serafina, her face pale and streaked with tears, finally understood. She looked at her father, then at the man she was supposed to marry, and then her eyes scanned the crowd and found mine. She stood up and walked toward me, moving against the flow of horrified guests who were now rushing for the exits. She stopped a few feet away. She did not speak. She just looked at me, her eyes wide with a terrible, dawning comprehension. It was a look of absolute horror, of betrayal, and, beneath it, something else. Gratitude. I had not just saved my own assets. I had saved her future. I did not smile. I did not comfort her. I just gave her one cold, analytical nod. Acknowledged. She turned and walked back to her father. I stood up. The room was collapsing into chaos behind me. Journalists shouting, investors yelling into phones. David was waiting for me at the aisle. "Ilara," he said, his mind clearly racing through the legal ramifications, the lawsuits, the recovery of our property. "We need to talk." I smoothed the front of my dress. I felt calm. I felt balanced. The equation was solved. "You are right, David," I said, turning to walk out of the ballroom, not looking back at the wreckage. "We should discuss my raise. Thank you for listening to my story. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.